everyone, Karen Glasser here, and welcome to Karen Glasser Live, interviews with brilliant artists and authors and all the creative voices of today. So I invite you to tune in weekly to the show featuring leading voices from around the world. Whether you're here live or on replay, make sure that you say hi in the comments and tell us where you are watching from. Today, we are welcoming Brian Sebastian from Movies, Reviews, and More to the show. In 1984, Brian started with a small radio station in Hartford, Connecticut, WPOP News Radio 14. And from there, he moved to KISS FM in Hartford, Connecticut, where he worked mornings with Jeremy Savage. In 1987, he moved to California, working at Power 106, doing promotions. And in 1991, went to The Wave 94.7, which was LA's, at that point, new age station. Boy, do I remember that well. Brian founded Movies, Reviews, and More in 1993, and it continually attracts the most recognizable names in the cultural arts and entertainment world. Currently, now listen to this number, guys, with 80 million views and counting a month, Movie, Reviews, and More continues to grow in popularity. In fact, it finished 17th in the top 50 global media, radio, television shows in the world, and 15 on another list. This guy is rocking it, and he's rocking it here on Karen Glasser Live today. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Brian.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this for months because I never get a chance to talk to myself, but I always wanted to talk to you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I always wanted to talk to you. And, you know, I could have gone on and on with an introduction. I truly can. I mean, you have done so much in your life. But I really wanted to get into the meat and the potatoes of the interview. So, first of all, I want to just talk about the elephant in the room. We named this show From the Shits to the Shiz. Now, for our audience who are probably wondering, why did Karen Glasser Live name a show called From the Shits to the Shiz? Well, when we first were talking about doing a show together, you told me this amazing story. It was funny, it's poignant, it just kind of like epitomizes who you are. So would you please share that story with our audience?
Well, the whole thing was, remember the housing bubble in '08? Things were being changed slowly, no matter what it was, on the media side, entertainment, housing, everything like that. I was on my ranch at that point with my partner. And it was one of those things where she was great with taking care of problem horses. And so I would be tolling out there, getting to know the horses. I knew nothing about horses at that point. I learned everything on the fly. And when you're doing that, you learn a lot and you're sweating out there. And it's hot. This was in Canyon Country in California, in Valencia. One of the best places to live, I think. It was one of those things where all of a sudden you're thinking. So when I'm outside, whether you're gardening, painting, or anything like that, ideas start to come. I knew in '08 you had to start to change things around because I was used to being taken care of, going to the Four Seasons, whether it's in New York or Beverly Hills, doing an interview with whether it's Robert Redford or Russell Crowe, but I'm on the ranch. And when you're on the ranch and you're like, okay, you're muddy, you're sweaty, you got horse manure all around you, you're loving it, and you're changing things because in your mind, you're changing things. How do you see the world going? How can you be relevant a couple years from now? So I always knew I was going to have a bunch of girls around and women because I saw women not getting equally publicity, whether it was in the world of dressage or in the world of bodybuilding. And I said, this is not right to have these women who work their butts off not getting recognition for all the hard work that they're doing. I said, this is never going to happen. So as I'm doing that, I got a premiere to go through this one night, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's not really a premiere. It's a press screening. It's at the Man's Chinese in Hollywood, California. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go. I didn't have time to shower or anything like this. I'm like, no one's gonna notice anything. I'm just gonna sit up in a corner in the back. Well, what they didn't tell me was an actual premiere. I don't even remember the movie at what it was, and it wasn't that good. And I'm like, first of all, why is it here? Second of all, why are all these people coming here? They said it's going to be a press screening. For a press screening, you might have 10, 25 of us. It's just press. No, they invited the cast, the crew, and our press people will mingle in there. And I'm like, I'm sitting way in the back because all of a sudden I'm like, is that me? Do I smell like manure? And I'm like, oh my God, it's on my shoes. Because I rushed to get into the truck and drove. I drove 25 minutes to Hollywood. And I'm like, oh my God, I really do smell? Because when you're outside, you can't smell. You don't know. And I'm like, oh my God, I smell Dash. I smell Dash's fur on me. Our horse's name was Dash the Daylight, so we called him Dash. And so he slobbered on me. And so I changed my shirt, but I'm like, it didn't work. I'm still smelling like horse manure. I'm like, oh my God. And then people are coming around me and they're sitting next to me and they're like looking around with that smell. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to blame the poor little black guy who's sitting behind him. I just wanted to see the movie and I didn't know. So I said, never again will that happen. But it was one of those things. Do you have time to take a shower? Is it what you think it is, or is something else that they don't tell you about? And I never forgot that instance. And I was like, this is never going to happen again to me.
But you know what, Brian? Here's the thing. You went, you stayed, you did it anyways because you're a professional. And that's kind of where, when I heard this story in the first place, it was you were going from one environment to another and you felt at home in both. And whether you were wearing the right clothes and whether you were smelling or not is a whole nother issue. But you really were the shiz. You were doing this red carpet thing, and you were doing this thing that most people would say, "Oh my gosh," and I'm leaving, and they would leave. So first of all, this story just stuck with me from when you told me, and I thought, okay, this is a great title for a show. All right, so now we're going to get into the deep part. How did you become you? You know, we always we say our parents. Is it nurture? Is it nature? How did you become you? What would you define as the reason that Brian Sebastian has become so successful?
It's from the world of drum and bugle corps. So if you don't know what that is, my handle for Instagram is Drum Corps Nut. The world of drum and bugle corps back in the day, they would take kids off the street and teach them how to play an instrument, whether it was a soprano horn, a mellophone, or anything percussion. You learn how to do that. You might not learn how to read because you learned that in elementary school, learning how to read music. But in the drum corps, you had to pick things up really quickly. You had to be able to be adaptable and to adjust really quickly, or else you wouldn't make that line. And then the reward was being able to go on tour. Going on tour for like 3 weeks or 6 weeks. If you think of kids back in the 70s, 80s, if they've never been to the beach, it's like an understanding. It's like a whole new world. If you've never been to another state, you're like, wow, I'm going to Massachusetts from Boston. And then once you start doing that, I'm like, oh, I'm going to another state. So from that, I learned earlier on that being traditional, working hard, and also now working smart will define you in a different way. So what if that drum corps experience, it's never left me. It still is what it is today. And I love that whole work ethic because it's the only one activity in the entire world where kids till this day, from say the ages of 13 to 21, because you age out of 21, can travel cross country without their parents, but with supervision and learning how to perfect one thing that you're good at doing, meaning that show. You're always perfecting that one showing and making it the best that you can. And you only have anywhere from 60 kids to 128 kids. That's all you have. And then when you're traveling, you're sleeping on the floor in sleeping bags, you're taking cold showers, but you're loving it because you're performing that show, that 12, 13-minute show in front of an audience, a different audience every night. But during the day, you're in the hot sun. Working, you might stand at attention for an hour. Imagine that in the cornfields of Ohio.
Wow. So you would say that your past really has formed who you are in the present world. You approach all of your work, everything that you do, with that same work ethic and that same desire. You know, we talked about all the different radio shows that you were involved with, and so you did a lot of radio in the beginning. What was the deciding factor to move to video, to move to visual?
Think of Howard Stern. Howard Stern, when he was making that move to CBS, I was always looking at Larry King. The shows are modeled after Howard Stern, Larry King, Oprah Winfrey, Bill O'Reilly. And I wanted to do those things like that. How can you mix all those and bringing women? Because remember, women weren't being represented. I always wanted to make sure I had at least 6 women who were co-hosts. I wanted to make them shine, and I wanted to be, say, like the Wizard of Oz behind the green curtain. Don't pay attention to me, pay attention to them. Let's make them shine. That's what I always wanted to do, and we have done that. So 4 of the girls are now influencers, and I couldn't be happier for them. You can't do this by yourself.
No, you
can't. Terry on the right. Terry with the red dress, she's got over 3 million views and still counting. And that is Taryn. She's in the world of fitness and bodybuilding. So that's out of Celebrity Connected Gifting Suite. So at Gifting Suites, I took the same companies, all those mom and pop companies and some of those bigger ones, where they spent a lot of money to give their product to celebrities. And then all of a sudden they got photos, but they don't know what to do with it. And all of a sudden, how do you make your money back? So I said, I could take that company, like that sign. That sign is handmade for me. So I said, why have a paper sign when I could carry my own sign that glows in the dark, that changes colors? That's why I took that at the Jewish Film Festival. And I said, we're always going to stand out in a different way. So Unique LED Products, they drove 10 hours from Ohio to come down to Franklin, Tennessee to be on 2 of our shows. Those 2 shows on Franklin, Tennessee are at 1.7 million views and still counting. Still counting. And they're not on YouTube.
Wow. I find myself just saying, wow, I don't always get a chance to talk to people like you who are doing it, who are killing it in the industry, who are doing what I'm doing. But I mean, your numbers are so much higher than mine, but I'm going to catch up with you. I'm just telling you, Brian, I'm going to catch up with you.
Well, I welcome that, because here, as you know this, Karen, it's not easy doing this by yourself. No. It's not easy doing anything. And I always stress that now. And here's the other thing. There's not a time limit on when you will make it. I'm a late bloomer. I found out through my charm and Joya Delaney in October of 1993 when I started Movie Reviews and More. Brian, you never were supposed to make it in your teens. You were always going to be a late bloomer. Right. And when she said that, the pressure came off. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I'm okay with that.
Right. And I think everyone would agree. You also want to enjoy the journey. It's not just so much to get the views. The views are great, but enjoying the journey to get there and who you've helped along the way, that is where the magic is. So the show is called Movies, Reviews, and More. So I'm just going to obviously it's about movies. It's reviews of movies and more. So what's the more?
The more is you. I can include anything in the more, whether it's music, whether it's the world of dressage, whether it's fitness, whether it's another country. If I find the janitor and I find that person interesting, I want to have them on the show. If they're comfortable and they like what we're doing, I might include them as a new co-host. That's the more. More was always going to be more important than the movie reviews because the world has changed.
So what do you attribute 80 million views and counting? I mean, that's a lot of views. And it's not really that many years that you've done this in. So tell me, what do you attribute getting 80 million views that our viewers might want to pick up some hints as to whatever they're doing?
Think about this. I take traditional with influencers. I'm not good when it comes to followers. I never wanted the followers. I wanted the views because I have to validate everything that I do. Literally yesterday, I was talking to my friend. He used to be with Segway. Brian, I see you have 1.1 million on this show here, but how is that a million each day? I'm like, Jack, I start at 0 each day, and I count up every single show from Tennessee, then my YouTube numbers, which is almost 1.3, and then I go from here. So think of Spotify and Pandora. You can have your followers or whatever on Pandora, but not everybody's listening to Pandora. Some people listen to Spotify. Some people listen to and watch Apple TV. So there's many different outlets. So what I do is I take our shows and we put them on all of those platforms, if that makes sense.
Oh, no, it totally makes sense. That is exactly what we do here at Karen Glasser Live. We don't just say, well, we're going to get all these views just in this little piece of the pie here. You got to throw it out there and would you agree with this, and meet your viewers where they like to consume their media.
Absolutely, because the average influencer now loves TikTok. But before that, they were on Snapchat, they were on Vine, they were on Periscope. Now, if you were older, you're not going to be necessarily on a Snapchat or Vine or a Periscope. And 2 out of those 3 are not even around anymore. But do you take away those followers that they had? And the answer is no, because they still developed it. I'm on a site that's got 52,700 views because I only go by views, and it's called Halanas. Out of Franklin, Tennessee, those 5 shows that we have, when we've got 5 in the can, they're not on YouTube. They're separate because they go up against YouTube. And remember this, Karen, people forget YouTube is not in every country. iTunes 247 is. Yeah. We're in Argentina. YouTube's not in Argentina. We're in China. YouTube's not in China.
You're right.
Right?
Right.
So do you think I'm going to leave those countries off the table because one
No,
outlet's not there?
of course not. Of course not. I mean, I have a lot of viewers in Italy. Like a majority of my viewers are in Italy. I guess they liked white hair ladies who talked to really interesting people in Italy. But
That's because you're a sexy woman. That's why.
well, there you go. Thank you, thank you. I hope it's also because it's a good show or something.
Yeah,
Uh,
that too.
so okay, you've had lots of guests on. We talk about the guests that you've had on. And I know that when I get asked this question, I never like to answer this, but I'm going to ask you anyways. Do you have some favorites? Who are some of your
Yes.
favorite guests?
Martin Sheen, Russell Crowe. And remember, the reason why Russell Crowe likes us in the radio room because he didn't like TV, he didn't like doing TV news back at that time. And he definitely didn't like the internet, and he hated people from print. But he liked our radio roundtable room. Why? Because we asked really, really good questions. So he
Right.
literally would go and shut the door and sit down and talk to us. But one time he talked to us for 45 minutes because he
Oh,
didn't want to leave. It took Sandra Bullock to come in and said, Russell, I adore you, but I got a flight to catch to New York. I got to get you out of here. I got to do the interviews. Because he would have stayed for another 15, 20 minutes. That was Russell Crowe. Robin Williams was great. I had a great interview with Charlton Heston. I reminded him that he marched with Martin Luther King. And he goes, and his eyes lit up. Now, depending what area you know him from or knew him from,
hmm
whether it was the NRA or whatever. But no, I chose to go back to kind of how he started. And the look in his eye was great. Janet Leigh, and this was for the re-release of Touch of Evil.
Oh my
There was an
gosh.
honor. Siegfried and Roy, when they came down from Vegas, they brought the white tiger down. They gave us a swag, was a lunchbox with the white tiger in it. So I brought two of my friends because you're not supposed to bring guests, but I was bringing guests. And one of the journalists was like, Brian, I don't know who these people are, but it's like you're like the Underground Railroad. And I'm like, and they didn't know why I was doing this. They didn't realize that a lot of people were suffering from depression, were suicidal. So I had to take them out of the world and I brought them into mine. So I would always say this, and I still say this to this day: who or what inspires you and why? Who would you like to meet? Who and why? And then I would make that happen for them. And then they would be so grateful. Now these same people that I took back in the 90s and the O's to an event with me, now they're turning their kids on to me. That's an honor. I feel really good about it.
That's huge, Brian. That is huge. That is huge because you've now become an evergreen individual that generations will continue to watch you and to listen to you and get to know you. That's huge, and congratulations on that. So it just begs the question: who would you like to be meeting, and who would you like to have as a guest on your show that you haven't had yet, other than
Well,
me? Of
well, well, you're coming out pretty soon. But Tiger Woods, it's Tiger Woods. And it's the reason because I like those prodigies, because you never know what they have to go through to get there. Now remember, this guy's been golfing since the age of 3. He was introduced on the Bob Hope show at the age of 3. His dad always knew where he was going. Look where he is now. He's had some problems because when you've lost your best friend and your father figure, things
Right.
change in your life. People go through those things, and you got to remember the reason he's got bad back and hip problems and knee problems because he's been swinging golf since age 3.
Right.
And so the other ones was the Williams sisters. I talked to them in the corner. Look where they are now. So there's a great movie that's going to come out in November. Will Smith is playing the Williams sisters' dad.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes, watch it. This is going to be a great movie of how he took the Williams sisters from Compton, out of all places, and made both of them into stars of who they are today.
Wow, I will definitely put that on my watching list. So Brian, I guess I want to know what's next for you. What's going to keep you going, and what is on your drawing board as the next thing that we can be looking out for with you?
Next thing that changes the world is the Dreamweaver Artist Ranch. It is a resort. It is a place where people have lost their homes. It is a place where if you're LGBT or you're suffering or we're in drought, we have a food shortage. On the property that we have in Mariposa, in Northern California, 25 minutes away from Yosemite National Park, it is that safe zone. We're in a climate crisis. I don't call it climate change. I call it climate crisis. We have fires going around all around the world. Why is Canada at 100 degrees in Calgary? That makes absolutely no sense.
It makes
Why
no
are
sense.
all these fires burning on the same thing? And so it's one of those things. I've interviewed these people who made these documentaries in climate change going back to '03. There's a movie called Chasing Ice, where they put 45 minutes, 45 cameras around um, the glaciers. And they came back a year later and they saw the big differences. This is '03 or '04 that I did those interviews back in
Wow.
the day. That's when I started seeing the change. There was another one, Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich. You know them from the
Oh, yeah.
films
I know them.
Independence Day. Well, they did a movie called Who Killed the Electric Car? Remember that? And they trashed 235 electric cars. What are we doing now? Hybrid electric cars. This is back at the same time, '06. And again, he didn't want to get rid of his electric car. What do we need? We need these things. So it's the
We
Green
totally,
Weaver artist ranch, which is most important to me.
totally. And so we're going to let people know how they can follow that as well and how they can maybe participate and get involved in that. I want to make sure that people know how to follow you. There's many different ways they can follow you on. Oops, wrong one. Sorry about that. Got the wrong one here. Whoops.
Yeah, lose my middle name.
Yeah, Louis, there you go. We're going to follow you on Instagram, and you have actually two different accounts there: movies, reviews, and more. And there's the Drum Corps Nut. So
Exactly.
that's the other. So they should follow you on both of those.
Think about this, Karen. And the reason I chose drum corps nuts because I wanted the audience of people in marching bands. Think of all the marching bands around the world. I wanted that whole audience, and I'm getting them.
And you're getting it. So you go after what you get. If you don't know what you want, how are they going to find you is what I like to say.
Exactly.
On Facebook, they can follow you at brian.sebastian.169. And more importantly, not more importantly, but just as important, go check out Brian on YouTube at Movies, Reviews, and More. Now, is there anywhere else we want to send them?
Yes, it's called the Art of Montague. So people that are artists or those future teachers, those future teachable people that you want to groom to be the best in the world. It's called the artofmontague.com. And the reason why we chose that because there's a lot of artists a lot of people in general that don't get noticed. And a lot of people, because you're small, that doesn't mean you're not going to explode 3 years from now.
Right.
So I like to take chances on anybody because you just never know.
You don't. And we took a chance on each other.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. And, I think that the biggest thing that works for me in my world, and I would assume it works for you, is that we look at opportunities exactly as that. They are opportunities, and we get a chance to meet some very cool people. We met kind of accidentally through other people sitting on a
coffee
Zoom,
chat.
a coffee chat, right? And we met and again hit it off fabulously because, well, you're fabulous. That's why. That's totally why. Any last thoughts you want to share with our audience before we say goodbye? I can't believe we're almost at 30 minutes at this point. So that is like wild crazy. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I would always tell people to be empathetic and to show compassion to people. There's a lot of people who are becoming homeless. There's a lot of people who had a rough year last year. And I'm constantly talking to them. Sometimes people just need someone to listen to them.
Yeah.
And the reason why I would listen to my friends, I would take them out of their negative environment and bring them into my world and say, this is possible. You can do other things. You just have not been given that opportunity. And more people need to be given that. Just because someone's got 1 million followers doesn't mean that they're doing well. It does not. When I sit and talk to my influencers, I know exactly what they're going through, and they're going through everyday problems. This is really sad. I only know 39 people last year who had a good year, including myself. That's it. Of all the people I know around the world, ask your friends how many people that had a good year last year.
Influencers in particular, I know that a lot of the influencers, their entire industry just disappeared. I mean, overnight because of the pandemic. Obviously, lots of people's industries, but influencers where they're out there, just giving it them all, their all. It's a huge challenge, and they need a Brian in their corner for sure. Hey guys, I want to make sure you follow me as well. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook. You can follow me on YouTube, all at the same handle, Karen Glasser. Imagine that. It's all Karen Glasser. Check us out there. And finally, we want to thank you. We know that you have a choice as to how you spend your time. You chose to spend it with Brian and myself today. We are eternally grateful. We want to thank you for that. Go out and give somebody an awesome day, and we'll see you next time on Karen Glasser Live. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, Brian.
Thank you so much, Karen. I